Hey everybody, welcome to Drive Thru Board Game Blog number 15 for October 10th, 2013. So I've got a week left on my Kickstarter campaign and it's going really well. I wanted to just give a little quick brief update about that, as well as talk about my sort of top 10 games I'm looking forward to for Essen 2013. One of my stretch goals is to be able to go to Essen in 2014, so I thought, well, this is a good opportunity. Essen's coming around the corner here for 2013. Let me talk a little bit about that, and then I'll talk a little bit about some coming attractions, if you will, with the board game reviews. Let's just first jump into that. So, like I said, doing a Kickstarter, I'm not going to try to belabor this too much on you if you're just watching this, on my YouTube channel or on Board Game Geek. But I've been mostly doing reviews of Kickstarter games. For this past month or so. I got a couple I just wanted to touch on that I am going to review shortly. Just want to give you kind of a quick, review of it. The first one here is Paradise Fallen, and it's a quick little 2 to 4 player card game from Crash Games. I've been playing this one quite a bit. Just my quick summary is that I think it's an excellent 2-player game, and it's okay with more, but I definitely like it with 2 the best. It kind of excels, in my opinion, at that player count. So I'll talk more about that, but if you're one of those that you like a Jambo, Lost Cities maybe a little bit, but kind of more on that Jambo side of things in a way, definitely take a look at Paradise Fallen. And the other one that I sort of hemming and hawing about reviewing here is Triassic Terror. Definitely, I was hoping to do a review this week, but I don't think I'll get to it. I'll probably get to it next week. This is an area control game. I've talked about it before. Mean, nasty, cool components. I've had an opportunity now to play it with a more amount of players, with 5, and then also with less. I was kind of curious how it would play with less, because a lot of times with these area control games, at least El Grande, you need like 5, or a good amount. So I played it with less. It plays good. It plays fine with 3. But definitely I think you want to have more players, and you need more experience, because this is one of those where you're not going to see what's coming right away, because there is some variability round to round. But it's a cool game, and I'll definitely give that a full review. Another game I'm going to review, I'm going to touch on this actually in a little bit, is Asgard's Chosen here. This is a new release from Mayfair, and I don't know if this is actually being released as a review copy, if this is going to be released at Essen or if it's trickling out now, but it's basically coming out now. It is classified as land domination and deck manipulation, basically a deck builder. But it's not one of those that is just taking deck building and kind of reusing the Dominion mechanic of deck building and then applying it to some other type of thing. It does for sure have deck building, but it is a very different take, a very different take on deck building. One example I may use is like Mage Knight. People say that has deck building, and it does, but it totally doesn't feel like a Dominion or Ascension or Trains or something like that. So this has a little bit of that in it, but there's a lot of other stuff going on with this. So this one I definitely need to play again, at least one more time, before I review it. But so far so good with this one. So that's kind of a preview of coming attractions. And I'm going to go ahead and do a little Kickstarter blurb here before I get to the the Essen stuff. I did the reverse last time, but so just a quick, if you're interested at all, I kind of was not really against doing Kickstarter for myself, but it just kind of came through the suggestion of some people. When I was at Gen Con this year, they're like, "Oh, when are you going to do a Kickstarter?" I'm like, "Well, never." And I had talked to some other video reviewer friends of mine about it, and and I've been very supportive of other video guys doing Kickstarter. Tom Vassell and the Dice Tower did it. You can see all the new stuff that he's done over the last year with the top 10 videos, the new podcasts, all kinds of stuff. A lot of things you can't mention. Marco did it. Richard Rado did it. He's his outputs really stayed very consistent. It may have increased, from what he was doing before then. And he's been able to go to the Greek vacation place. I can't remember the name of it. The Board Game Vacations or something like that. And then he's going to go to Essen this year, so that's very good. So enough people asked me, and suggested that I do it. So it basically became sort of a drumbeat almost for myself. And I was trying to think of the best way to do it. How do I structure the reward levels? What's the Kickstarter going to be for? It's not like I'm going to stop making videos, necessarily if I don't kickstart, right? But like I said, in the Kickstarter stuff, Gen Con is expensive. Possibly if we hit that Essen stretch goal, that's a super expensive. And, it eats up vacation time from work. That's no joke, to take vacation time out of work when you could be taking vacation time to spend vacation with your family or, for Christmas time and things like that. So it basically became a little bit of, okay, people keep asking me, so where there's smoke, there's fire. So I just wanted to take a quick moment, sort of publicly thank these people. I've thanked them privately, but I think it's important to thank them. And in particular, the Kickstarter's gone well. It's not quite over. There's a week left, but let me just, let's pause a moment and I can sort of publicly thank people. And I hope, I haven't asked any of their permission, but I hope it's okay. So specifically, I talked to some, just random folks at Gen Con, and they were very encouraging and asked, when are you doing Kickstarter? But Scott Alden, the guy that basically runs Board Game Geek, he's like, are you doing a Kickstarter? What's going on there? And I said, well, no, I don't think so. And he says, I definitely would be supportive of it. And so, try not to be too mushy, but, I'm kind of a nut about board games. So I've been on Board Game Geek since like 2004 or 5. I think my registration date is 2005, but I was on there a while before that. And, just kind of trolling, lurking. So, it's meant a lot to me and some of my friends and other people. So just to meet him was cool, and just, see, he really obviously has a huge passion for it. So when he came up to me and, asked that, I was like, okay, so Scott thinks that's a good idea. So maybe I should really consider this, and I don't know anything about him personally or anything, but obviously I respect what he's done for the community, and just the nature of Board Game Geek has really shaped the direction of the hobby, I think, a lot more than I've even thought about. So definitely just, his impetus in particular, as well as some other just, fans, so to speak, mentioning that was kind of the impetus for me to really kind of mull over and think about the right way to do a Kickstarter for myself. And then I kind of got it going, and I asked for some feedback from some people. And lo and behold, I asked Tom Vassell, to take a look at my page, and he was really encouraging, and he basically sort of saved my life a little bit. He says, you really need to change this particular stretch or reward level, or you're going to kill yourself. And I did, and he's definitely right. I think that was a great idea. And so I was able to kind of learn from some of his, trials and tribulations with his Kickstarter, and how he's kind of dealt with the whole Kickstarter thing, and really kind of stand on his shoulders and, well, some other people's shoulders. So anyway, I totally appreciate him being open to that, because, he doesn't have to give me the time of day ever. And he's never not, responded to me or been, forthcoming with me. So that's very much appreciated. And then Jamie Stagmeyer, he does the viticulture game, and he's got Euphoria coming out. And he actually has a consulting kind of side business that he does with the Kickstarter. So if you've got a Kickstarter game, or you want to get on Kickstarter, and he's got a whole series of articles about the best way to do stretch goals and all these different things and all these things to consider. And you can even hire him, if you will, to help run and plan your campaign. So I'll put a link to his website here in the description and everything. But he spent a little bit extra time with me, and really kind of went back and forth with me on some of the different ideas, and I just appreciated him doing that. And likewise, Lorian Green, she did the Going Cardboard movie, the documentary, which is amazing. If you haven't gotten it, you can get it on Amazon and iTunes and different things like that. We had never met or interacted, and we friended each other on Facebook, a while ago, and I just kind of out of the blue shot her a message, and she was very supportive and had a lot of good feedback, and it was really kind of in line, with what I was doing, because I'm not really giving you like a physical product. So, a lot of the back and forth with her was about that, and, sort of the best way to kind of do things. So anyway, thanks a lot for that. And then last but not least, Rodney Smith and Richard Rotto both have, done crowdsourced campaigns, and they do pretty much what I do. They do their videos a little bit differently, and from each other and from me, and so they didn't really have to spend any time giving me feedback, but they did, and they were both very supportive and always have been. So thanks for indulging me in that little segue there. So let's jump into the meat of this vlog. And I'm going to talk about 10 games that I'm looking forward to coming out of Essen this year. It took me a little bit of time to distill this. There's probably a couple others on here that I could have added, but I was like, let me just cut it off at 10. There's probably like 100 games coming out or something like that, and I probably had a list down to about 15 or so. You know, not that many out of the 100, but I mean, geez, how many can you possibly play? So I'm not going to mention games that have hit stateside like Spyrium, Francis Drake, Relic Runners, which is coming out like this week. You know, I'm just talking about games that are going to basically be released, at least from my perspective, over on this side of the ocean at Essen. And this list is roughly in order of my interest, but you could probably interchange, especially the ones in the middle. So the first game I'm looking forward to is Caverna, and that is sort of like the sequel to Agricola by Uwe Rosenberg. It looks actually just like Agricola, which is a little bit sort of off-putting, because I don't want to just have Agricola, somewhat different. I'd like it, I'd like to play a new game, not just play Agricola all over again. And the thing that it does is it substitutes the cards that you draw or draft with buildings that you can build. Now, from my cursory reading of the rules, it looks like those are the same every game, which is a little bit, I don't know about that, if they're the same every game, but maybe I'm reading that wrong. I didn't have all the components in front of me, obviously, to look at, but just from reading the setup of the board and things, it looks pretty much just like Agricola, but with the buildings instead of cards. And the buildings are basically furnishings for the inside of your cave. Now, the theme looks really cool. You're basically dwarves, sort of managing your little estate, if you will, with a sort of an interior cave and then an outdoor sort of like farming area and stuff. But, I mean, Agricola's great. Most of his other games are really good, so this is definitely one, anybody really wants to look at. And I'm definitely one of those people. So, but we'll see if it gets too samey or if it's too much like Agricola. We'll see. I have faith that they would just regurgitate Agricola, obviously. So, we'll see about that one. So the next one is Nations from Asmodee. And this is a Civ game. So it looks more like a Through the Ages type of Civ game versus like a Clash of Cultures or a Civilization from Fantasy Flight. And that interests me because Through the Ages really has fallen flat for me. I've given that several chances, and it just doesn't click with me when I want to sit down and play a Civ game. Now, the neat thing about Nations, it looks a little bit less complex, a little bit less fiddly, but it still retains a lot of those individualized personalities and monuments, like there's a Statue of Liberty card, things like that, which is interesting because if you take a look at not so much Civilization, but like Clash of Cultures, everything is sort of genericized, which I like that because then you can kind of grow your own civilization and roll your own sort of history that way. But I do kind of miss some of those, historical footprints and, footnotes that happen with the different, individualized leaders and everything like that. So this one definitely has interest for me, and it looks like if you read some of the designer diary notes on the Board Game Geek page, there's several of those, and they kind of talk about how combat will work, which looks a lot more interesting than Through the Ages. Basically, it's more of a globalized combat idea, and a couple other different random things about how the economy is going to work and stuff. So it definitely looks very intriguing. In the graphic design, everything looks pretty nice. So next one, also from Asmodee, is Rampage, which I had an opportunity to look at Gen Con and take a look at sort of the giant-sized Rampage. I have really no interest in this game other than I think my son will like it, and it's kind of like pulling teeth right at this moment. He's 12. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but he's just not really into board games right now. So it's kind of pulling teeth to get him to play a board game. And unfortunately, I threw the new Walking Dead co-op in front of him. He likes Walking Dead. It's something we kind of watched together, sort of father and son. And that game is horrible. So it's really bad. So yeah, so he's not in the mood to play board games right now. So hopefully, how could he resist Rampage? So we'll see. But it looks like a really fun, just kind of wacky game. The next one is A Study in Emerald from Tree Frog Games, and I already backed this one on Kickstarter. It is a new game from Martin Wallace, and it has a sort of a smorgasbord of mechanisms. And I talked about Asgard's Chosen before, and I think this one will be kind of in the same vein. It has some deck building, but it has a lot of other things going on. You've got sort of like auctioning and bidding, you've got deduction and bluffing and different roles and things. So it's not just yet another deck building game with deck building as sort of the core of the game. It kind of sits in there alongside a lot of other game mechanisms. So I'm really interested in getting that. The art looks really off the wall. So I mean, there's a lot of people say it looks ugly. I'll reserve judgment until I actually see it, you know, on my table. But definitely, it's going to be an intriguing ride to try to figure out this game and see what, you know, it's all about. I mean, it's Cthulhu, it's deck building, it's auction, it's deduction, it's Martin Wallace, you know, all kinds of good stuff. So we'll see how that one turns out. Now the next one was actually released last year, but is being released this year finally in English, and that's Might and Magic Heroes from Axel. So I don't know how readily that's going to get across the ocean here. We'll see. Hopefully they do get a few across. Now I have played, well, I played the original Might and Magic RPGs from way back in the day, and those were very, very fun games. Very, at the time, sort of in-depth computer RPG games. And then they also have sort of the Might and Magic Heroes, which is a weird sort of, they're almost like a Warcraft or a Starcraft kind of game, where you have, but you have more of a personalized leader, almost like in Warcraft 3, if you remember that game. And then you have sort of an army and a kingdom that you're sort of controlling, almost like a civilization game in a way as well, but more of a fantasy civilization game, which there's a computer game coming out at the beginning of next year, and I can't remember the name of it, but it's basically Civ 5, but in a fantasy setting, which I'm looking forward to that. But this looks kind of similar to that, where you've got sort of resource management, you've got, you know, fortress and cities and armies and stuff that you've got to grow, and the components actually look really neat. So there's not miniatures, but there's like big old chunky wooden blocks with stickers and things. So hopefully that one makes its way over, and I'm definitely interested in that. You know, it's got sort of that Mage Knight kind of feel to it, but, you know, with more of the Might and Magic theme and more of that sort of empire building aspects to it. So definitely looking forward to that one. And the last Asmodee game is Prosperity, which is designed by Reiner Knizia. Now, all of these with Asmodee are also being sort of co-published, I guess, with some other companies, but I assume they're going to arrive on our side as Asmodee. So Prosperity is actually a Reiner Knizia, and he's co-designing that game with the, I can't remember, Bleasdale is the last name, I think, and he co-designed Keyflower, which is a game that I really enjoyed from last year. This one looks very interesting because it's got some sort of very Reiner Knizia type of qualities. If you go to tricktrack.net, that's the only place I could find with a decent amount of info on it. And they kind of compared it to like a Goa or something like that, and I thought, oh, that should be pretty interesting. So it looks like a little bit more meatier of a Knizia game, and it also has some, it looks like intermediate goals or like obstacles that get in the way, having to do with sort of environmental, you know, issues that happen as you try to grow your little, you know, city or whatever. So a lot of those kind of, you know, are lighting off different bells for me. So I hope that this game is sort of a return to form, as opposed to, you know, regurgitating Celtus and, you know, doing little spatial pattern games that he's been doing lately, which is fine, you know, that's whatever, but you make what you want. But I'm excited to, you know, see a new Tigris and Euphrates or something like that come out. So we'll see if it's like that. I don't know. The next game is a Mare Go from Queen, another Kickstarter game, and it's a Stefan Feld game. It's basically Stefan Feld mushed with Wallenstein. You basically have the cube tower as a action selection idea, and you've got all kinds of different ways to score points. So, I mean, what's not to be interested in here? You know, how does Feld treat the cube tower? I mean, Feld did his Moncala game. He's done his different dice games. Now he's going to do the cube tower. So I think he's going to come out with like a weird rondel type of game coming out later this year or next year. So, you know, I just want to see how Feld does it, you know, and that's pretty much the gist of that. I don't really care about the theme or anything. I just want to see, what did Feld do with a cube tower? That's it. Okay, sold. So that's that. The number 3 game, I should say, is Chiddy Mages. Now, I'm going to throw up here pictures of the Japanese edition. I don't have any pictures of the forthcoming American English edition. This is going to be released by AEG. This is designed by Seiji Kanai. So it looks like a kind of a micro type of game, but it has betting. And now one of the games that I've mostly enjoyed is Colossus from Reiner Knizia, and it's basically the sort of penultimate version of his betting games. He's got like 3 or 4 betting games, and this is kind of the latest revision of it. And we really enjoyed it. There were some weird wonky things with the end of the game and how that kind of worked out. But for the most part, that game was really, really fun. So I'd like to see, you know, his take on it, because you're going to have different, you know, special ability cards to kind of move bets around and sort of change the state of the board. So, you know, you can kind of think love letter with like betting, you know, kind of thing. So that definitely looks very, very intriguing. And number 2, finally, is going to be Glass Road. That's going to come over here from Z-Man. And that is a Uwe Rosenberg game. He's also doing it with the folks that did Terra Mystica last year, which was one of my top games. I've had a chance to watch MeWe's walkthrough video. If you go to Board Game Geek and you go to the Glass Road page, there's a nice walkthrough video with the prototype components by Michael Wibner. And really interesting kind of game. A couple of cool things about this one that really has kind of, you know, risen it to the top of my list, so to speak, is you have a dual dials. So if you remember in Ora et Labora, you had the one dial that sort of tracked resources building up. Well, these two dials kind of work together. You have some resources on one dial that are going to act as, you know, provide resources to contribute to your other dial. And everybody has their own dial. So the dial movement is actually your workers sort of working behind the scenes, which makes a lot more thematic sense than, you know, wood slowly building up and then somebody taking all of it. And then you can't get any wood for a while. That's always kind of bothered me about Agricola and Le Havre, not necessarily because it's more of a market there, but in Ora et Labora, it's like, oh, now the wood's gone. I just have to wait, and then more wood will appear. Why couldn't you just take one wood? You had to take all 10, you know. But this looks like a little bit more interesting dynamics with those resource dials and things. And the other thing that looks interesting is you're going to have your own little player board, sort of like Agricola or Labora, but you also have almost, it's like they took all of the worker placement spaces and then made cards out of them and then gave you a hand of them. And then you're going to play, I think, 5 of those every round. But if multiple people play the same card, it sort of lessens the ability of that card, which is a very interesting mechanic, and one that, I've kicked around a little bit, not at all like how he's done it here, but I think it's an interesting take to sort of, you know, shift that sort of action selection, you know, action drafting type of thing, or worker placement, you know, up into your hand and kind of play with that sort of selection space a little bit. Very interesting take. So that kind of like, oh, that looks neat. You know, that was something I was kicking around, you know, just for fun. And so that kind of raised and intrigued me a little bit there. So a lot of kind of cool things going on with that, and it definitely doesn't look like Caverna, which maybe is this Agricola 2.0. This actually looks sort of like a new, you know, sort of a progression of his design, or at least a branching of it in some way. So that's Glass Road. You know, interested in that one for sure. And then the number 1 game I'm looking forward to is Going, Going, Gone. This is a Stronghold game. This is a very, very interesting game. It's almost like a micro game because you basically have some cups and some cubes and then a paddle. And the rules for the game are actually on the front and back of the paddle. What's going to happen here is you're going to be auctioning for different cards, and you're trying to collect sets of like cards or like cards from different countries. So there's basically 2 kinds of sets that you can collect. And basically whoever has the paddle, you're kind of like the start player, and you're going to count down from 10. And people are just going to drop cubes in cups that are next to these cards, and whoever has the most cubes by the time you count down from 10 is going to get the card. So it's sort of a weird real-time auction mechanic, and it's going to cause a lot of chaos. And you know, I think it just sounds like a lot of fun as well, because you can just, I mean, who can't play this game? You say you need to collect a lot of the same cards, drop your cubes in the cups, let's go. 10 seconds around. I mean, there you go, and it should be fun, and you should be able to still have that kind of party game atmosphere, if you will, but then also still have a little bit of that strategy kind of thing. Is, you know, do you waste a bunch of cubes, you know, bidding somebody out of something? You know, you got the whole dynamics of an auction there that'll stay in there. So I think it'll be fun. I mean, it sounds to me like a breath of fresh air, very different, you know, type of game. So totally looking forward to that. So anyway, that's quite a quick rundown of the top 10 games that I'm looking forward to, and so I'm looking forward to watching Board Game Geek live from Essen, and you know, anyway, thanks for everything, and I'm just going to stop talking now. Thanks.